Joining us is someone who is new, first time on The Observer. Let me please welcome former government minister, Mr. Robert Hunte. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Pleasant good evening to you, and pleasant good evening, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, and just to let the folks know, in your neck of the woods, what time is it?
It's actually 11 p.m.
11 p.m. Thank you so much. Now, looking at all that's been happening and taking place, I know you don't want to get into personalities, but I think you've said it best when you said that the democratic process needs to prevail. Please expand on that. And we're talking about, of course, what seems to be taking place internally right now in the People's National Movement.
Well, again, when I made that statement was said around a time when there was the issue surrounding the cancellation of the convention. At that point in time, I was very clear that the cancellation of the convention, based on the Constitution, and by extension, at that convention, we had very important elections, and the only person who had the authority within the party to do so was the general counsel of the party. And therefore, I felt that the cancellation of the convention without reference to the general counsel was at the time disenfranchising the general counsel and by extension the members from having a convention, which is a very important thing in PNM, and having a say in the elections of the new executive. As we all are aware, subsequent to that, the party did convene its general council, and the general council and the leadership of the party gave their explanations to the general council, and who at the time thereafter ratified the decision of the leadership. So my focus at the time when I made that statement, as I said, centered around the right or the prerogative of the leadership to cancel that convention without taking it first to the general council. That I understand was done last week Saturday.
You seem to highlight the fact that there's a fear that if it is that what is laid out in the Constitution is circumvented, the party and by extension the administration will pay a price for that. Please tell us more.
Well, I have always made the point that the voice of the people is the voice of God. And again, my position was very clear in an attempt to ensure that the democratic process always prevails. There is a constitution, the constitution needs to be followed, and as I said, I believe that a convention is something that is important to the people. As you know, in a PNM convention, it doesn't start on a particular day. There's about 6 or 8 months of pre-work done by different party groups having their own conventions and annual general meetings. A lot of mobilization is put in place. And therefore, again, just the cancellation of a convention just by the leadership without reference to the general council, to me, was not correct. And it is something, and any attempt in my mind, any attempt to disenfranchise the general membership from their ability to participate in an election, in the election of the executive, it is something that I feel that any logical person should stand up against.
Let me ask this. First time here on The Observer, and I think it's only fair that I ask, especially for those who are locked on across the region and those who may still be in the dark, who is Robert Hunte?
Well, who is Robert Hunte? Robert Hunte, I have spent the majority of my life in banking specifically, my chosen career, and I have had a fair amount of success in that particular corporate sector. I was the managing director of a number of regional banks, managing director of Barbados National Bank, I actually was responsible for the expansion of Republic Bank into Ghana when we purchased HSC. I retired from Republic Bank, took early retirement from Republic Bank at the level of executive director of the bank. I then entered into active politics in 2017 after being a member of the party for over 40 years. I was the Minister of Public Utilities. I resigned from the government in 2020. I took up a position at Answer Macau Group. I was the Managing Director of Answer Bank and Finance Director of the Answer Macau Group. I was recently appointed as Executive Director at the Inter-American Development Bank with responsibility for representing all the Caribbean countries on the board of directors of the bank. Washington for 2 years, and I only recently returned to Trinidad in August 2024. So that is me. I have one daughter, I have one wife, and my wife is Ghanaian. And right now I'm actually in Ghana with my wife and her family doing some business up here.
Yeah, I thought it was only fair that we let the public know who you are and, of course, what you've been able to accomplish. What stands out for me is that you're also good when I've read some of your work, and I want to make reference to something that you wrote, 2 articles in the Express 2 years ago, entitled "A Hard Pill to Swallow." And the extract here is that it is incumbent on any government to appreciate that vertical equity demands that any group in the society facing special problems needs special attention. Like all systemic problems, there's no silver bullet solution, but instead, several incremental steps that we need to take, modeled to some extent by what others have done to address similar problems. Now, we don't hear that kind of language from individuals who possess your type of academic background, and of course, you being a career banking. I mean, you've been inside of what people will call the economic beast, and yet still you're able to make reference and to spotlight the fact that there are those who were not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and I'm personally not asking for any special treatment, but of course requesting equity across the board. This is something that is not displayed here in our society. I don't believe it makes up our social DNA as Trinbagonians. When you talk about this, where are you taking us to?
Well, you know, I have always advocated, and it's a clear fact, that we all have not started the race at the same level. All right? Some people among ourselves, and we live in a very plural society, and although we have seen a number of improvements across the board, I think Trinidad and Tobago per capita income has moved astronomically, or grown astronomically from 600, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to something like about 1,000 or 18,000. So we have had tremendous amount of growth because of our per capita income. I mean, I think, however, there are people in Trinidad, I think the level of income disparity within our groups are getting wider and wider. We are facing in Trinidad and Tobago a crime situation. I think that crime situation is driven by a number of factors, including socioeconomic factors. And therefore, I am one that strongly believes that if we have to look at our crime situation, I was back in Trinidad, and it was sudden when I recognized that the level of crime in the country has reached the level of epidemic proportion. And that is not a nice society. That is not what we all strive for. The fixing of that problem is not going to come by simply adding more cars or killing more of the criminals. We have to really look and try to fix the economic disequilibrium that that we have in the system. I visited some schools when I was there in August. I went to schools in Laverne Hill. I mean, it's like, again, there are issues from that system in the education system that we need to address. And therefore, in fixing the problem, as has happened in other parts of the world, the problem that we have in Trinidad and Tobago needs to be addressed from a national perspective. We have to recognize that we have a problem. We have to recognize that some groups did not start at the same level, and we have to be in a position to be able to help the people in those particular groups to be able to also strive and be part and share of the economic wealth of the country. And if we don't do that, then some of the side effects will be the increased crime that we are presently existing. This is a national problem. This is not a particular group problem, because all of us together make up Trinidad and Tobago. And when one particular group in that country is not operating well or is underperforming, it means we as a country cannot perform well.
And when you look at the title of this article, a hard pill to swallow, one has to ask, were you sending a message to those in authority to understand that, the reality that is playing out here does not reflect some of the things that are being done or not being done by the administration? It goes on, and again, quite interesting. It says, this declining representation of Afro-Trinbagonians in the business community has not happened overnight, but over a period of time. A period of time during which the PNM has, by and large, occupied the seat of governance. Indeed, this is ironic when we consider that roughly 80% of the PNM's electoral support comes from people of African descent. The reality, however, is that the PNM has always been a party for every creed and race, and Afro-Trinbagonians have never enjoyed any special breaks simply because the PNM was in power. With all due respect, that's not how it's sold. I mean, there's going to be PCOM, there's going to be political jabbing. Of course, the race card plays out at every elections here in our modern history. And to say that, people don't believe wholeheartedly that they must anchor themselves with the PNM because of their ethnicity, that in itself is unbelievable, because when you have people making comments like, at the end of the day, I rather suffer with my own, I rather stay with my own. What does that tell us?
At the end of the day, listen, people words are very, people could use words, I am not responsible for people's statements. I am responsible for my statement, okay? And as you said in that article, I think PNM has always said and has always prided themselves that when they get in power, that they are a government for all of Trinidad and Tobago. And that has been the rhetoric, and that is what they have been, that has been said. What I am attempting to say is that I believe that, one, we have to stop pussyfooting around this particular issue. We have a particular group in Trinidad and Tobago. When we look at where our hotspots are, when we look at the failure rate in the secondary schools, when we look at a number of different indicators, this particular group is having a challenge. This is no different from what happened.
Okay, I think you lost him there. Take a short break, we'll get him back. We are back, Mr. Hunte. I know you didn't realize perhaps we had got cut off, that we were cut off. Go ahead. So you were saying, yeah.
Where did we reach?
We have reached the fact that when we consider that roughly 80% of the PNM's electoral support comes from the people of African descent, the reality is that the PNM has always been, according to your writing, a party for every creed and race, and have never enjoyed any special breaks simply because the PNM was in power.
And the point, and that is to the credit of the PNM, The PNM has always been one big getting, regardless of where their dominant base has been. When the PNM has gotten in power, they've always made the point that they are a government for all the people, and that therefore they manage the country for the benefit of every citizen. And there were no special breaks given to people of African descent.
Then let me ask you this. So let's put this to rest. You are a former public utilities minister. There has been many talks, of course, and I myself have interviewed people on it, which is geographical discrimination. Some areas may get access to certain things, and some areas may be cut off. What say you, at your helm as public utilities minister, was there ever such experiences?
Never. I could say emphatically, I was the Minister of Public Utilities. I had my friend from Mearo, MP Para, they were all colleagues of mine. My number, I was one Minister of Public Utilities where every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago had my WhatsApp number. I received all the calls. I answered all calls. I fixed all leaks. And I think there was never any discrimination on my part in favor of any particular district. And I could say that without fear of any contradiction. I worked with all the MPs because at the end of the day, I had a passion for fixing the water situation in Trinidad and Tobago. But the point I made when we got cut off, I said before, whether we like it or not, when you look at all of the indicators, although I recognize that there are some successful, like myself, I would put myself in that category, people of African descent, there's a number who are not doing as well. And therefore, we, like has happened in other countries around the world, Malaysia being the most readily example that comes to mind, we have to recognize this as a national problem, and we have to put programs in place. And these programs need to be driven by any politician, and I also challenge you yourself, right? When you be interviewing any politicians from any particular party, what are the programs that the party, be it the UNC, is putting in place to deal with the problems that arise or the lack of representation of people of African descent in the business community, the fact that we are having areas, the schools in the African areas are not performing as well as they should. The level of incarceration of people are very high among this particular group. What are we putting in place to ensure that we have special programs to deal with this particular group? As I said before, this is not new. In the case of Malaysia, the grouping that was at risk was actually the Indian community in that particular area. And it took a national focus and a reallocation of resources to ensure that as a country, that particular group was taken care of.
And let me ask you this, Mikee, you go on to say that people of African descent must stand up and demand more from their government. But with what leverage? I mean, we've heard, of course, Prime Minister Dr. Rowley saying that he is disappointed that Afro-Trinbagonians should be further along than where they are now. They should be more advanced. But where are the programs? And when you look at it, I mean, you have sat in a cabinet where some individuals, I'm not going to call names, but everybody knows we're talking about, would have that advantage, that social advantage, where, listen, you can get pennies on the dollar a piece of property with a guarantee that the government is going to rent whatever is built on that property. That letter is taken, of course, to the bank, how it is processed. But basically, at the end of it, the perception will always be there are those who get everything for nothing, and there are those, no matter how they go into the rat race to fight, they simply don't end up as successful. Now, is that fair?
No. Again, you continue to raise the particular issue and the end result. And what I'm saying is that it is important some of the issues that you talk about, I mean, I'm not particularly aware of that particular example that you drew. But what I'm saying, I worked in a bank. I am fully aware how it is to get a loan and how that happens. And I agree that there are certain measures simply because of who own the land in this country. When you have land, you have wealth. When you have, that is a very important. When you have land, you are able to leverage land to be able to get money. So there are certain, that's why I started by saying we all didn't start this race similar at the same level. I mean, I'm a successful black man, and I own my first piece of land, executive director in the bank, when my father never gave me a piece of land. I got a piece of land when I was 40, 45 years old on my own. All right? That is not the starting point for a number of individuals. And therefore, we have to, and I am challenging, and I said black people, we have to demand from any government, PNM government, UNC government, what are the programs that are going to be put in place to make sure that we uplift and we help that particular group, that disenfranchised group.
And let me ask
that
you,
is what it is.
I understand.
So I'm not going towards, I am looking forward as to what we need to do. I am saying that when you look at how problems like this were solved in other countries, there were specific, we cannot, in Trinidad and Tobago, if something like that is done, we sweep and we talk about it as race, all right? And that is not right for it to happen, and we can't favor one particular race over the other. And I'm saying that is not particularly correct. That is not how we deal with issues of this nature. And in some cases, you do have to put programs in place to ensure that there is equality, because we did not all start the race at the same level.
I agree with you on that. Let me ask you, because my time is wrapping up here, and I want to get you back here so we can talk about statements that was made about WASA and what have you. Are you then putting yourself in a position, maybe sometime soon, to make all that is being said here a reality for that group of individuals who may not have the leverage or have that standing to be successful or to gain that success?
Well, again, here I am speaking to you, and therefore I think I am starting to do what it is that I could do. I also give a number in my own way. I consulted to a number of individuals. I use my vast experience in the bank to help people on a private basis. And I am also putting this on the national agenda that we need all political parties. And I will love if you could help in taking this up by asking, if you are, as we're getting into the election period, what exactly are the programs that the UNC is putting in place? And if we are, what's the name of the other party by Hope, or whoever is seeking to walk the corridors of power, nothing is wrong, because we all want to solve crime, we all want to solve and live in a safe society, and we have to recognize that the disequilibrium in the country is also a contributing factor.
All right.
As relates to, you mentioned one of my favorite topics about water and WASA, and again, I love, having water for all in Trinidad and Tobago was always a dream of mine. And it is something that I hold very dear to my heart, because I think it is very possible. I've always said that fixing the water problem in Trinidad and Tobago, there's no silver bullet. And when I looked at the problem at the time, I introduced a plan where I recognized there were about 7 to 8 things that needed to be done, and needed to be done simultaneously. And you also needed to have designated funding. My time at the IDB, I think I participated in some extent to ensure that we have now the funding in place. And I think we have a plan. And I see the Minister of Public Utilities now is trying to execute that plan. And execute the plan in a very systematic manner. this is a problem that could be solved, and it requires a number of things. No one issue like fixing the leak is going to fix the problem. No one issue like metering is going to fix the problem. No one issue like refurbishing all of the dams and the reservoirs is going to fix the problem. But a combination of activities working together is what we need to happen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hunt, for taking time out this evening. Sorry about that break in transmission, but I will hope to have you back soon, and we can talk more about the electricity rates and WASA and all of those other issues right here on The Observer. Any closing comments?
Well, again, it was indeed a pleasure to share these few points with you. And as we point in the direction of where we're going, where we want to go, we all want to live in Trinidad and Tobago, a beautiful country. I love my country dearly. It's a fantastic place. I think we celebrate a number of good things. However, we need to all work together in being able to solve the problems of the country going forward. And I am convinced that all of our problems are solvable, all right? So once we put the right type of medicine in place to solve them. So thanks again for having me. Thanks again.
And have a good one.
And I look forward to interacting with you again in the future.
Thank you so much again. Thank you.